Well, good evening and welcome to the National Conservation Training Center Conservationists in Action interview series. I'm Randy Robinson, sitting in here at the National Conservation Training Center virtually. Glad to have you all with us this evening on Facebook Live or on the NCTC live stream channel. Thanks again for joining us. Our topic tonight is wildlife webcams, partnering for conservation and education. And I'm joined by guests, Katie Julian, Ed Britton, and John Howe, and I'll introduce them in just a little bit here. But for our topic, webcams have become a new and important tool for wildlife conservation across the country and across the world, really. It's amazing how many wildlife webcams are out there right now. You might be surprised to find out that there are 30 just within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service alone across the country. Here in the Mid-Atlantic, we're in Shepherdstown, West Virginia, the home of the National Conservation Training Center and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge is on the eastern shore. They've got 4 webcams. Of course, we've got our bald eagle cam here at the NCTC, very popular, and a lot of friends on tonight that enjoy viewing the bald eagle cam. In Pennsylvania, there are 3 different bald eagle webcams. And even in urban areas, Washington, D.C. has 2 bald eagle cams. Pittsburgh has 2 bald eagle cams. There's one just north of here near Gettysburg National Battlefield. And that's just in a small Mid-Atlantic region. Tonight will be, our guests that will be joining us are from out in the Mississippi River Flyway, the Central Flyway, where they have thousands of migratory birds, including bald eagles. So we're going to take a broad look at webcams in general and how they come about, and we certainly welcome your questions. You can send those in any time on Facebook or on the NCTC live stream channel. The first part of the hour here till about 6:50, we'll have an interview with our guests. Then we'll take about a 10-minute break, stretch a little bit, and then at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock Eastern time, or 6 o'clock Central Time, we'll go into our public lecture series, and Katie and Ed and John will share some beautiful slides and videos of their home turf there on the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife Refuge. So that's the plan. I want to say thanks very much to our friends of the National Conservation Training Center for making this all possible, for sponsoring us tonight, and also a big shout out to the Upper Mississippi National Fish and Wildlife Refuge. They're co-sponsoring this Facebook Live, as well as the stewards of the Upper Mississippi River Refuge and the Raptor Resource Project. And we're happy to have their representatives with us tonight. So let me go ahead and get started, having sort of set that up there. The Upper Mississippi River Refuge is over 200 miles in length. So it's a huge refuge. They've got 6 different webcams that operate in different sections of the refuge, many different views of nesting and migratory wildlife. And Melissa will probably put some of those up there this evening so that we can see those in the background, some of the action that's going on with those migrating birds and other critters. This refuge is a great example of the power of partnerships to enhance public enjoyment and appreciation of wildlife through this innovative technology. And it's really all about partnerships. Here at NCTC, we know our friends of NCTC. We have great folks that join us with Bald Eagles 101, a Facebook citizen science group, our Eagle Monsters who've been with us for a long, long time, the Outdoor Channel, who makes it all possible. Other organizations like explore.org stream webcams all around the world, hundreds of them, really, in this country, in Africa, all around the world, and organizations like HD on Tap, that offers some tremendous wildlife webcams. The National Park Service, as you probably well know, has many cams around the national parks. Many of them are in scenic features like Old Faithful, Yellowstone, and so on, but they have a very popular bear cam up at Katmai National Park in Alaska. We'll talk more about that a little later. An eagle cam at Channel Islands in California. So these webcams are very, very popular. They develop a strong community of people, and we want to take a deep dive into them tonight. So again, thank you all very much for joining us. Let me go ahead and introduce Katie Julian. Katie is the Visitor Services Specialist at the La Crosse District of the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. She's been there since 2014. She enjoys working with volunteers, helping to manage a visitor center, creating environmental education and interpretive programs, and occasionally getting out with the biology staff and fire management teams. Ed Britton is also with the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. Ed is in the Savannah District. Katie's in the La Crosse District. There are 4 different districts. Ed has over 43 years of experience with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working in the National Wildlife Refuge System. And he works closely with the stewards of the Upper Mississippi River Refuge. They have 5 wildlife webcams, including the popular trio bald eagle's nest. I'm guessing a lot of you have heard about that, but Ed will talk more about that a little bit later on. And John Howe is Executive Director of the Raptor Resource Project. John and the Resource Project have developed nest cam programs worldwide. Raptor Resource Project is dedicated to preserving and strengthening raptor populations, expanding participation in raptor conservation, and fostering the next generation of preservationists and educating people around the world about raptors and their habitats. They operate 2 very popular eagle cams near Decorah, Iowa, and they're collaborating with Cornell Lab of Ornithology on a future nest cam in the Philippine Islands, a Philippine eagle nest cam. So thank you very much to our guests for joining us tonight. And let me start off a little bit here with Katie. Katie, could you tell us a little bit more about the Upper Mississippi Refuge and the La Crosse District and your job as a Visitor Services Specialist?
Sure. So when you were talking about partnerships, I think this refuge has a really amazing partnership creation story. It's almost 100 years old. It was created in 1924, thanks to the efforts of a small group of really passionate anglers who had heard that a large section of the river was going to be drained for commercial purposes. And they were able to lobby Congress for its creation, and we're very happy to be here today. Like Randy mentioned, the refuge itself is really big. It's about 260 miles of the Mississippi River. It runs through 4 different states, from Wabasha, Minnesota, down through Rock Island, Illinois. There are 70 communities along the river or along the refuge with the river. So it's a dynamic and complex place to be. We're lucky to have a lot of different stakeholders who have a lot of different interests for how the refuge is managed. We get over 3 to 4 million visits per year for people who are coming to go fishing, hunting, wildlife watching, to come take photography, to go swimming, picnicking, just to get out and enjoy the sunset. So it is one of the most visited refuges in the United States. When I think about the Mississippi River, before I moved here, I don't know if this is what I would have pictured. The river changes quite a bit across those 260 miles, but I think the most interesting thing to me is that all along the river we have these bluff plateaus which rise from 100 to 500 feet right alongside of the river. So it's known for its scenic beauty. The roadways along the refuge are part of the National Scenic Byway Roadway Commission. We have about 40% of the waterfowl in North America that come through the refuge along the Mississippi Flyway. It's a wetland of international importance and a globally important bird area. So I don't think I even knew that there were that many birds that existed before I got here. So being here to experience both the fall and spring migrations have really been a treat. The other thing that I think about with this refuge is we work really closely with a lot of state, federal, and local partners to manage it, particularly the Army Corps of Engineers. The refuge is bisected by 11 lock and dams that create inundated pools that allow boats to move up and down the river for commercial navigation. And that's been a long part of the history of the refuge, to maintain a channel now 9 feet deep for commercial navigation. So I think the work that we do with partners is a really cool case study in how we try to manage for the needs of economics, of social needs, and the ecological needs of wildlife.
Well, thank you very much, Katie. Sounds like a great place. I've often enjoyed the audio coming from your flyway cam. It's very relaxing to hear the ducks and the geese and the loons, and just listening to it is a joy. Thank you. So Ed, I'm sorry,
I forgot
Katie, could you say it?
to talk about the other parts of the question that you asked me. Randy mentioned that there's 4 different districts on the refuge. So I work in the La Crosse district, and we manage about 50,000 acres of the refuge, just 2 of the pools. It's the smaller one of the districts, but we have quite a few urban visitors that come. We also have a visitor center that is usually open 6 days a week outside of the pandemic conditions. We also have a friends group that operate a nature store here. And the habitat types here are really well known for amazing floodplain forest habitat. The visitor center sits on 186 acres of restored sand prairie, which is really beautiful in the summer. And the backwaters here are really quite fantastic, which is some of what you see on the Mississippi River Flyway Cam. And as a refuge ranger, Randy described some of my duties already, so I get to help manage the visitor center, work with our volunteers and friends group, coordinate our volunteer program. We have a Facebook page that we maintain. We offer public programs when we can, and are busy keeping up with all of the signs and kiosks along the river. So it's a complex and a fun place to be. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thanks for being with us. And folks, if you're just joining us, we just heard from Katie Julian, Ed Britton, and John Howe are also joining us. I want to say hello to just a few folks here that are joining us on Facebook. We've got a nice group of people out there. Susan, hello to you. Mary Beth, we got Betty Beckley here, Maria, Terry and Deb from Bald Eagles 101. And I saw, yes, Glenna from Friends of Blackwater National Wildlife and Refuge in Maryland. So thanks very much for joining us, folks. Let me next introduce Ed Britton. Well, I've introduced Ed, but Ed, would you tell us a little bit about the Savannah District and your job as refuge manager there?
Sure, be glad to. Good evening, folks. Glad to be here tonight. And I just want to make a comment, too, about the refuge itself. If you can imagine Congress setting aside 240 miles of river for natural resources, the foresight that Congress had in 1924 to do this is just amazing. And every day at my job, I think about that. And I've worked on the lower Mississippi River. I've worked a lot of different places. And it's so incredible to see the result of this, of setting aside this 240,000 or this 260,000 acres, but 240 miles of river. And you have flowing backwaters and islands and natural habitat. And once you get below the refuge, it's totally changed. It's developed. So it's just incredible foresight that the Isaac Walton League and those folks that pressured Congress, but they made that decision in 1924. So I'm down in the Savannah District. We're the southernmost district of the refuge. We cover 80 miles of river, essentially from the Quad Cities up to Dubuque. It's pools 12, 13, and 14. And as Katie said, with the locks and dams, it's kind of like large pools. There's about 10 to 11 foot difference between the pools. A lot of agriculture going through here on barge tows. Very important commercial barge traffic area for this. The Savannah District is kind of unique. We have 5 wetland management units, which is unique in the floodplain, that we manage for moist soil plants, for waterfowl, for shorebirds, for other water birds. We have pump stations, water control structures at these 5 units. And they flood often, but we still manage those as much as we can. We also inherited 10,000 acres of the old Savannah Army Depot. It announced its closure in 95, officially closed in 2000, and we have 4,000 acres of native sand prairie. It's the largest native sand prairie in the state of Illinois. And we have over 40 threatened and endangered species up there, Illinois state listed species, because it is native prairie, so very unique. We have a small visitor contact station, very beautiful station, overlooks the river. A lot of folks come in here. We have bike trails, a tremendous amount of hunting and fishing. And this year with COVID, the numbers have just skyrocketed. Folks want to get out. They want to enjoy themselves. And that's one of the great things with the webcams we have here. They overcome all those obstacles that folks can't get out and see eagle's nests and thousands of birds concentrating in the backwaters. But we, Savannah District, we get thousands and thousands of waterfowl here also. So a great place for tourism to come down and recreation, folks.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you much.
You bet.
And folks, if you're just joining us, I want to make sure that you stick around for the second part of this program. At 7 o'clock Eastern time, Ed, Katie, and John have some fantastic PowerPoint slides to share with you, beautiful photographs of the areas they're describing right now, as well as some videos. So be sure and be there for that. So we'll continue now with John Howe. John is the executive director at the Raptor Resource Project. And where is home base for you, John? And what kind of work does the Raptor Resource Project do?
Thanks, Randy. So home base for me can be just about anywhere between 3 places. My home is Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which is up by Minneapolis. And my home where I grew up is La Crescent, Minnesota, right overlooking a beautiful bluff, Great Spirit Bluff, overlooking Lake Onalaska and Pool 7 there. So that's really where I come from. And then I guess another home that I spend a lot of time in and is quite dear to me is Decorah, Iowa, and some of the other CAM areas that we're working with partners. So it's a mobile job, and it's been virtual for quite some time, no formal office. So Raptor Resource Project was founded by Bob Anderson, really just to, Bob was a lifelong falconer, and his passion was peregrine falcons. And he captively bred, raised, and helped reestablish peregrine falcons after the devastating effects of DDT. So that's really how Raptor Resource Project got started. In that process, a lot of cooperating partners were required, and Bob brought in a lot of his friends and other people to help out with that effort. So those cooperative relationships included power plants and other companies and other property owners that had bluffs where peregrine falcons used to be. So Raptor Resource Project got involved in cooperative projects early on. Most folks know about the famous Decorah Eagle Cam and the amazing outreach education program that's been. That's a big part of our mission and a big part of what we do. That's why I spent a lot of that time in Decorah. The other thing that's really cool is getting out every every year. There's a number of things we do, including monitoring, banding, and keeping a lookout on the falcon population and those eyries up and down the great Mississippi River Valley. And that we go all the way up from northern Minnesota down to Peoria, Illinois, monitoring sites, and usually band about 70 falcons a year, along with other organizations like the Midwest Peregrine Society and others in maintaining that population that's quite strong.
Very good. Well, thanks for the info there on the Raptor Resource Project, John. You guys do some awesome work. And if you had a chance to see the Nova special, PBS Nova series, last year it was called Eagle Power. That featured the Decorah, Iowa Eagle Cam that John is talking about. And that was a great program. I believe it's available online on the Nova website, but if you're interested in that, definitely look it up. A very good program called Eagle Power on Nova. So I'd like to go back to Katie right now. And Katie, I was intrigued by a couple of names that you have up in your La Crosse district. Could you tell us a little bit about the Driftless Area and Bryce Prairie? I think your mic is muted, Katie.
Thank you. You'd think with how many online meetings we had at this point, we'd remember. But anyway, the Driftless Area refers to a geographic region of kind of the southwest corner of Wisconsin, the southeast corner of Minnesota, the northeast corner of Iowa, and a little corner of Illinois. And if you can imagine, 12,000 years ago, this area was covered in glaciers except for a little island of the Driftless Area. So as those glaciers moved around the Driftless Area, they carried rock and debris with them, also called drift. And as they moved and receded, that drift was left behind. So this area is called the Driftless Area because we don't have any of that rock and debris here. And this area wasn't flattened by the glaciers in the same way that other parts of the Midwest were really shaped by that glacier action. So here, as I mentioned before, we have the tall bluffs that rise along the river. We have some deep river ravines for rivers flowing into the Mississippi. And if you're into geology, we have some really cool karst topography where water has eroded through limestone and dolomite and left behind some really cool caves and sinkholes. When we also think about the glaciers not touching this area, there are some amazing plants and wildlife here that are not found in other areas because we avoided that period of glaciation in the same way.
Very interesting. And what kind of birds might we see on your migration cam? And what are the best times of day to view it?
So right now we're celebrating the fall migration, and it is an incredible time to see the Mississippi River flyweight cam in action. We've welcomed about, well, I'm not sure exactly how much, but we get about 20% of the northeastern population of Tundra Swans that move through the refuge at this time of year. I know I've seen around 8,000 to 10,000 swans that are out in the southern part of Pool 8 in the last week. So the Tundra Swan migration is incredible to see and hear. Along with them, there are thousands of diving ducks and puddle ducks. We're still seeing occasionally sandhill cranes, great blue herons, egrets, a variety of gulls. The bald eagles are out there enjoying the festivities. It's a very alive time to enjoy on the river. I would say maybe morning is a good time, particularly to be listening to the Tundra Swans. I know it's my favorite part of my day when I can have my cup of coffee and listen to the birds. But I'd also tell folks that there's pretty much no bad time of day to enjoy it. My favorite surprises have been seeing what's out there in the afternoon, what the eagles are up to, and then I've particularly enjoyed the little peek at what birds are doing at night. So as the sun goes down, you can still see the reflections of birds on the water, and to see those silhouettes and imagine which birds are hanging out together and listen to them as they kind of quiet down for the evening is a pretty special experience too.
So Melissa's moving around a little bit on the different cams. I think on the flyway cam, I just saw an adult bald eagle there, and there's another one coming up on the left. And I'm blown away by the number of eagles that you have out there, in the thousands. Now, how did your partnership with John Howe and the Raptor Resource Project come about on the flyway cam?
I'm actually going to pass this question to John because he tells the story so well.
Okay, great.
So we've got the Great Spirit Bluff Falcon cam, which is over on the Minnesota side. And as the technology got better and better, we could get better at seeing off season with Peregrine falcons, seeing what was going on. Amazing watching of the migration of Tundra Swans, and you could see the pelicans fishing, and just huge masses of birds out there on Lake Onalaska. So cameras got better, but I think the real big thing was, hey, we hear I-90 here. What would it be like to have a camera out on that pool, away from that, and just immersed in that sound, and to be able to look closely at all these birds? And so that was really the dream, and contacting Tim Miller and the group over there, and just doing some work checking in on, would you guys be interested in partnering on something like this? Was working with some great technology upgrades in audio with explore.org and the crew there. So that really, they were very receptive to that. And that's when the hard part started, was trying to figure out how to do something on a river pool that has a water elevation that goes up and down 10 or so more feet each year, and get that video and power out there, and do that all, and shoot it 3 miles up to the bluff where we could actually broadcast it.
And your flyway cam was actually on an island, right?
Yeah, we picked a finger of an island which had seen a lot of the activity, where most of the white masses were, and what we could see out there for pelicans and tundra swans and cormorants and other ducks and waterfowl. So we knew that there was a big concentration out in that spot. So that's where I thought it would be best to put the camera. The change, though, is we've seen with flooding, and just that if you look at the satellite view there, it looks just like a river delta. So each year when flooding happens, that island is extended out, and silt and stuff is deposited. And I think it was, just a summer or so ago, the flooding in 2019, we had a lot of island building going on out there. So things change out there.
Well, thanks, John. Oh, Ed, you are located, how many miles downstream from, say, where Katie's at in the La Crosse district?
We're about 160 miles, 170 miles south. We're the last stopping point. Yes, indeed.
And do you get similar kinds of birds migrating through there? Any other species that are different from what Katie and John might see upriver?
We do. We get the same species. They seem to get more, particularly the diving ducks, whereas they may get 150,000 diving ducks. We may peak at like 35 to 40,000, but we do get large concentrations of waterfowl moving through here. We'll build up to about 10,000 tundra swans. We have a few trumpeter swans, but those trumpeters are non-migratory. They all came here through introduction programs through either Minnesota or Iowa. And bald eagles, over the years that we've done bald eagles, we have on the Refuge wide itself, we averaged about 350 bald eagle nests annually, and our winter counts range anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 bald eagles in the winter time.
Wow, amazing. And how did your partnership with the Stewards of the Upper Mississippi River Refuge come about?
We've had a friends group on the Refuge for many, many, many years. And originally it was called Friends of Upper Mississippi River Refuge. And each individual district had their own chapter. And we were called the Palisades chapter. And beginning a little after about 2000, we started having more intense discussions about having more dedication to the districts themselves rather than an umbrella group where there was a president and a vice president and a secretary of taking a lot of those and putting into the district themselves. So in 2009, our stewards came about, and it is a tremendous supportive group that we've had, just such a great partnership. It was through the stewards that we established these webcams. They purchased the webcams, all the materials. They are the gatekeepers of it. As John knows, social media is just tremendous. These are strong emotional attachments that these folks have with these webcams, and it takes a strong person to manage this socially in the media part of it. So that's a challenge in itself. But we've been so blessed to have the stewards and have this whole partnership that has developed into many other programs, but the webcams have just become nationally famous, primarily because of the bald eagle trio, which is such an unusual story. And the only documented story that I know of where was actually 3 adults in a nest.
And you've got some great slides that we'll show in the second part of the program a little bit after 7 o'clock. So folks will definitely want to stick around and see those on the trio bald eagle cam. And you have 5 other cams there. What are the other species that the cams look at?
Yeah, we've had 5 over the years. Our very first one was a camera inside a Peregrine Falcon nest box. In fact, we had partnered with Raptor Resource at that time with Bob Anderson early on. And that was very unique. They were in there for about 4 years. And then the 5th year, when the female returned, she laid 5 eggs, but she didn't have a mate. And the eggs were infertile, and they never came back. So we've still got the camera there. We just don't have any Peregrine Falcons in it. The other web cameras that we have 2 migration cams, and one focuses on primarily waterfowl migration. The other focuses on the bald eagle migration. And as you'll see in one of my slides in the PowerPoint presentation, in December of 2013, we had 1,100 bald eagles lined up along a mile stint of shoreline at Lock and Dam 13. Just tremendous, and that's our bald eagle migration cam. And then we have the Cormorant Island webcam, which features a pelican nesting colony along with double-crested cormorants, great blue herons, and great egrets. But like many things, there are many challenges with webcams and natural disasters. We'll talk about the August 10th derecho that we had here was 100-mile-an-hour winds. We lost the bald eagle trio nest crashed down. Fortunately, there was no young, no eggs in there. They relocated immediately. They're building a nest now. So we didn't have the opportunity to put a new camera up because they picked a tree so quick, and they're still building the nest. So we hope to reestablish that and get back all of our armchair enthusiasts that we can. And then we had tremendous flooding. We had 10 feet of water higher right now last year this time, and it flooded the Cormorant Islands. We had to rebuild the island out there, so that took our camera out also. So they are a challenge. They are a wonderful asset, really very informative, educational, but they are a challenge to maintain and manage.
Well, I can definitely agree with you on that, Ed. So thanks for that background there on the Savannah District and the birds that you have there and the cameras. Hey, John, how did you get involved with the Raptor Resource Project? You're now the executive director there, but when did you start there, and what kind of cams does the Raptor Resource Project operate?
So, yeah, kind of interesting how I got involved. I guess the big part of it was being a landowner down in that area. Bob Anderson approached my father back in the early 2000s about putting a nest box on what our family had called Great Spirit Bluff. It had historically had peregrine falcons nesting there, and there was noticed to be some raccoon predation there and some problems. So he asked if he could put a nest box up there, and that happened. And each year, the Raptor Resource Project folks, Bob and Amy and Dave Kester and others, would come up and band the falcons, and we'd have little picnics and things like that. It wasn't until 2011 when the Decorah Eagle Cam went viral, and from the American Eagle movie that was put together, PBS Nature by Neil Reddick and Bob Anderson. We were talking about that and that crazy popularity of that put on Ustream that Bob and Amy Reese had done. And I said, Bob, you're a falconer. How about having a camera that looks out over this $1 million view out and watching peregrine falcons? So my son's Eagle Scout project became a Falcon Cam project. And needless to say, the camera ideas that I had about making the visual experience and audio experience better, Bob could never keep up with me. So basically these crazy people that rappelled down there every year to once a year I'd get Bob to update the cameras and things like that, decided to start rappelling myself and do that. So volunteer from 2011 all the way up until Bob passed away in 2015, and I became the executive director. And that's also the year that we switched over to HD cameras and started, working on that with the Decorah Eagle nest and webcams there. So that's how I got started in this, and just amazing. Think about the educational component of this. I think that really was what Bob and Amy and the crew had in mind when Decorah Eagle Cam went viral, and they put that online, was just so people could see what a Nest Cam looks like, and that what Ed was talking about, that intimate connection with people being able to see something day in and day out, and seeing all the interesting details of life, in this case an eagle's nest, how connected people get to that and to those to the wildlife and to nature generally. So the cameras that we have, a lot of the cameras and partnerships started out of Bob's work just monitoring the peregrine falcons that were being reintroduced. So putting a little webcam in a nest box. Ed mentioned that the group was there early on with some peregrine falcon work down there. But our biggest cam is the Decorah Eagle Cam. Typically, when eggs are hatching or being laid, anywhere between 4,000 to 10,000 people watching simultaneously. So it's hugely popular and a worldwide phenomena, and so many great cameras, and that outreach, I think, has really exploded from just that concept and that formula. We got a Decorah North Nest, which is a little bit further out of the city. Decorah is right by Fish Hatchery in the south part of Decorah. The North Nest is north of town, a little bit more remote. We got the Great Spirit Bluff Falcons on our family property. And we've got the Mississippi River Flyway camera, which emulated out of that. A couple of years ago, we worked with Bob's great friend and cinematographer Neil Reddick to put Wisconsin Kestrel Cam together down on his farm. He and Dr. Laura Johnson, his wife. We've got the Wisconsin Kestrels, and that's a partnership with Cornell there at that Nest Cam. Eagle Valley, which we're getting ready to put online. Brett Manderneck, who manages Eagle Valley down Glen Haven, Wisconsin, south of Prairie du Chien. And then we've got a number of other partners. Bob used to work for Excel Energy. We band falcons at a lot of those locations, and we help them manage a lot of their Peregrine Falcon cams, and we've got a Heron cam up here in Minneapolis, which is really interesting that we work with them. But partners, Excel Energy, Dairyland Power, Minnesota Power and Light, Great River Energy, and a couple other grain elevators up and down the river. Those really came from the Peregrine Power Plant program, which was meant to help as a stepping stone to bring Peregrine Falcons all these different areas where there are historic eyries up and down the Mississippi River. So a lot of the work that we're doing right now, emulates from that repopulation of the Peregrine Falcon up and down the river.
And what kind of birds are we looking at on the screen right now?
Katie, you should.
Big Sandhill cranes.
Sandhill cranes, okay. Yeah.
Right.
They're a big bird, aren't they? They're a large bird.
They have very interesting vocals, and I think that's what draws a lot of people to watch the Sandhill cranes, and their love for them is just that guttural, I don't know what you'd call it, let's just say a call. Maybe Katie, you know it, but their call is what is so interesting.
They're amazing to watch. They do occasionally raise young on the Refuge, and to see them grow and change is pretty amazing. Like you said, they're big birds and they sound unusual and are surprisingly graceful for as large as they are. So I love that they can be so loud you can hear them for such a long distance, and then amazingly they can really blend into the landscape.
Well, I wanted to make a mention that the Raptor Resource Project offers some great educational resources for teachers. So if any teachers out there, check those out for sure. John, who developed all the educational resources that you have there on your website?
So a lot of the initial watchers of the Decorah Eagle Cam, fortunately, were teachers or love to share. And we've got several teachers that have been working for a while now here, using the Decorah Eagle Live Cam as an everyday component of their curriculum. So they're doing core and STEM type things and working things into the classroom experience. And it's so neat to see and them talk about how engaged the kids get, and how some of the more shy kids or kids who might have some other issues, in developing, whether that be speaking skills or things like that, how they all that stuff just kind of drops away when they're watching something or talking about eagles, and they make these eagle books and do things like that. But we've got a core group of teachers that has developed modules, and they started that out. Our vice president, Dr. Laura Johnson, is heading up our education committee right now, and we actually have teachers, 4 or 5 teachers that are putting together lesson plans, and then Amy works those up and puts those on the website. So that was a huge thing with the coronavirus coming and the lockdown. And several weeks before that happened, we had just launched that site. So a great resource for people who are doing homeschooling, others in the classroom. And because we have this neat opportunity to chat back and forth, like on our website or the Explore site, there's this interaction with people who know a little bit more and are educated about whatever the camera is that they're watching. We've got a dedicated group of chat moderators that do the general public outreach questions and monitor that. And then we also have a dedicated group of teachers that work just with the classrooms, and it's an ad-free interface. So teachers pretty much are the ones who put those programs together.
Thanks, John. Thanks to Amy and all the teachers that have worked on those. That is a great resource for educators. So let me take some questions from Facebook right now. Here's a question for you, Ed. This is from Pam. Do you think that webcams help increase interest in people coming to the refuge to see wildlife in person.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and I think they have a greater attachment to it. It generates that interest in them. You know, sitting at home, it overcomes those barriers. But like we've seen with COVID, folks just want to get out, and most of the ones that come, particularly the Trio webcam. Oh yes, I've seen that. I binge watch the Trio webcam when I'm at home, and we've talked to families that sit around and also watch the webcam. But it is a good attract. It's such a great educational program for those folks and helps them understand nature. And sometimes drama and bad things happen in nature, but it does bring them out, and that's such an important aspect of the webcams.
And we've got some folks from Refuges in Texas joining us. So we'll say hello to the High Plains Refuge Complex down in Texas, also Balcones Canyonlands down near Austin. Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us. Patricia from Tennessee. Let's see. Marcy asks this question: how can the public view the fall migration cams in the Driftless area?
I can answer that one. At least with the Mississippi River Flyway camera, we have a partnership with explore.org, and that brings up an amazing part of what the cam operators do, you know, the time that they're actually sitting there managing the cams. But that is put on our website, the Raptor Resource Project website. There's actually a little chat that is 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where some of the moderators are actually taking questions and things like that. We also stream that through explore.org, who takes our streams and helps us push those out onto the web. So those are the two ways that you look at the Mississippi River Flyway cam. And then I think, Randy, you guys and some others, it's also at the visitor center there in Bryce Prairie, but they're selected partners that we allow to stream and watch that camera on site also, like you guys are going to be doing. Ed, I could let you guys answer, for what you've got on the river there.
Yeah, ours is at the Stewards of Upper Mississippi River Refuge website. And the PowerPoint will show you that soon. But if you just type in Stewards of Upper Mississippi River Refuge and go to their website, all the webcams and all the history of the webcams are there too. That's what's great. There has been so much drama, and it's so interesting, particularly with the Eagle Trio, how you've seen a dysfunctional family, and all of a sudden you have a national experience that no one's ever heard of before. So it's a tremendous experience, but a lot of drama out there. Sometimes too much. And when drama happens, I can tell you, we get overwhelmed. We've been sitting here, and when all 5 lines light up, you know something's happened at the Trio webcam.
So this next question leads into that.
A little bit more technical answer to that, I think, just utility-wise, to know what's going on with the cameras, I watch the cameras with my iPhone, and I can dial in right through the Raptor Resource Project link that I have saved there. I can go to the Explore app on my phone, and I know you can download that from the App Store on Androids and things like that. So that availability. PC, I bring it up on my HD TV, smart TV, and say, play YouTube Mississippi Flyway camera, and I watch that and listen to that in the morning. So anything that's on, the YouTube platform or whatever with a web link like that, there's multiple ways that you can watch it too if you know where to go.
So Sue is asking a question. We are so glad that the bald eagles have recovered and are thriving, bald eagle populations. Are there any downsides to that recovery for other species or other issues? Well, one, I can say, Ed mentioned all the drama. as the populations grow, they fight. They're very territorial. Now, the nest here at NCTC, over the years, we've seen numerous fights among adult eagles. And how is it, Ed, when you have a large population of eagles out there? I guess it's two different things when you're talking about migration versus nesting time, though, right?
It is. We see a tremendous amount of fighting. During the winter on the ice, if one eagle gets a fish, you better get away very quick, because there's going to be other eagles looking for a quick meal. What we've seen in the nesting season, we used to see nests a mile apart. Now we're seeing nests within a quarter mile to a half mile. And what we saw, that extreme tragedy where that pirate pair of bald eagles marauded and came in and killed our female, was trying to take over the nest. Their nest, with the one pair that we think attacked them, their nest had blown down about a couple of weeks earlier, and they were looking for a ready-made nest that was close by. So we see very much, when you have heavy concentrations like this, there's a lot of interaction between the pairs and between migrating eagles also, for competition for food.
Thanks, Ed. And Deb makes a comment here. These live eagle cams and other cams are great for educators and have kept us all sane during COVID. So heartfelt thanks to you all for keeping us connected to these amazing animal families. And we do have some other questions coming in, but it's about time for us to take a little bit of a break here. I am going to keep a hold of these questions and we'll get back to them. But let's go ahead and take a little bit of a break till about 7 o'clock, about an 8-minute break here. Give us time to stretch. And then we're going to come back at the top of the hour, 7 o'clock Eastern time, with Ed, Katie, and John. And they've got some fantastic slides and videos to share with you. So stick with us. We'll be right back. In the meantime, Melissa's going to put some slides and music up here. And we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Again, thanks for joining us. We'll be right back. Yes, I've had unmuted my microphone. We are back. Thanks for joining us. If you're just joining us, we're here now for the Conservation Lecture Series, live from the National Conservation Training Center in or near Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I'm Randy Robinson with the National Conservation Training Center, Heritage and Partnerships Branch. We welcome you all to our evening public lecture series that we call the Conservation Lecture Series. And we get folks from all around the country and the world, really, that have been coming into the NCTC auditorium over the past 20-some years that the training center has been here. But during this time of our COVID, we have been doing this virtually. And so Facebook Live and live stream are the two platforms that we're on. So thanks again for joining us. I will reintroduce folks that are our guests here this evening. And let me first introduce Katie Julian. She's the Visitor Services Specialist at the La Crosse District of the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. She's been there since 2014. She likes to work with volunteers, help manage the visitor center, create environmental education and interpretive programs, and occasionally get out with the biology staff and the fire management teams. So thank you, Katie, for being with us. Ed Britton is also with the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. Ed is the refuge manager for the Savannah District. There are 4 districts in the refuge. It's a huge refuge stretching more than 200 river miles up and down the Mississippi. Ed has over 43 years of experience with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Wildlife Refuge System. And he's been partnering with the Stewards of the Upper Mississippi River Refuge. They have 5 different webcams in operation on their refuge, including the popular Trio bald eagle nest cam that Ed will be talking about here in a little bit. And we also have John Howe with us. John is Executive Director of the Raptor Resource Project and has been developing nest cam programs worldwide. The Raptor Resource Project is dedicated to preserving and strengthening raptor populations, expanding participation in conservation, and fostering the next generation of preservationists, and educating people around the world about raptors and their habitats. And on the first part of our session here that we talked about, I'd mentioned some of those great educational resources that Amy Riss has developed there at Raptor Resource Project. They also have 2 very popular eagle cams near Decorah, Iowa. And John's also collaborating with Cornell Lab of Ornithology to do a future install of a nest cam on the Philippine eagle in the dwindling forest habitat of the Philippine eagle. So welcome and thank you to all of our guests. Thank you to everybody who's joining us this evening. In this part of the program, we're going to get some very nice visuals. So whenever Katie is ready, we'll first go with Katie and Ed, and they'll be talking about the Upper Mississippi River Refuge. And Katie's going to lead us off and give us some background on that. And then Ed's going to join in and talk more specifics about their webcams and the Trio bald eagle nest and so on. And after that, then we'll hear from John. And anytime you have questions, go ahead and send them in on Facebook Live, and I'll keep track of those, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. So thank you very much. And Katie, if you're ready, take it away.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you'll be able to see our slideshow, and I'm going to be running the slides for myself and Ed, so I'll ask for your forgiveness if there's any delay with that.
While you're doing that, Katie, I should mention and say thanks to our friends of the National Conservation Training Center for sponsoring our Conservation Lecture Series. They've been doing that for many years. They mentioned we usually do it in the auditorium at the training center, but now we're doing them all virtually. So again, thanks to our friends group, Friends of NCTC, Also, thanks to the stewards of the Upper Mississippi River Refuge, the Raptor Resource Project, and the Upper Mississippi National Fish and Wildlife Refuge for cross-posting and broadcasting this on Facebook Live along with us tonight. So Katie, it looks like you're ready to go.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone so much for joining us. We're super excited to be coming to you virtually from the Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the National Wildlife Refuge system, but for anybody who might be new, the Upper Miss Refuge is just one of 586 national wildlife refuges across the country. And the map that you can see here of the United States with all those little black dots shows the location of where some of those refuges are located. As the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, our mission is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people, which is you. So we are super proud to work on your behalf to be able to offer the best possible habitat we can for wildlife so that these amazing wildlife resources can continue to be around for ours and for future generations to enjoy. If you notice any patterns and where those little black dots were located, many of the national wildlife refuges are located along 4 key flyways or superhighways in the sky that particularly migratory birds and waterfowl use as they travel long distances from where they nest in the north in the summer to where they spend the winters in the south and east. So all those little black dots help kind of act as a series of stepping stones or kind of like rest areas along a highway for migratory wildlife as they make those really long journeys. And the Upper Miss Refuge is right in the middle of the Mississippi Flyway. And as Randy mentioned, it's a pretty big place. It runs across 260 miles of the Mississippi River from Wabasha, Minnesota, down through Rock Island, Illinois. There are 4 different districts that help manage the refuge. Our headquarters office and the Winona District are located in Winona, Minnesota. I'm coming to you from La Crosse, Wisconsin tonight in the La Crosse District. Our McGregor District is located in McGregor, Iowa, temporarily in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. And then Ed Britton, our district manager and my co-presenter tonight, is located in the Savannah District, about 4 hours south of La Crosse on the southern end of the refuge. So when we think about what kind of habitat types there are along the river, there's both the open water and then vegetation along the water that makes almost like the plates in a braid, if you can imagine braided river channels of both land, cattails, wild rice that come up above the water and create this fantastic backwater habitat for fish and for birds. In addition to the river itself and the backwater areas, the Upper Mississippi River Refuge has one of the longest contiguous or nearly continuous stretches of floodplain forests in the continental United States, which is super important for nesting bald eagles, which we'll hear more about later. And then alongside the river, we have some grassland and oak savanna habitat, which is one of the rarest ecosystem types in the United States today. And because we have high quality habitat and several different types of habitat, we get to brag about some really cool wildlife that either spend the year here or happen to be migrating through. And right now in this picture, you're looking at Tundra Swans, and we've been celebrating the return of the Tundra Swans on their fall migration. They come down from the Arctic and northern Canada and Alaska, stop over on the Mississippi River before moving on to the Chesapeake Bay. So we get to boast that we can have about 20% of the northeastern population of Tundra Swans that comes here to the river. I see anywhere between 8 and 20,000 swans that hang out at one of the popular overlooks here. And that sight and sound is really unparalleled. It's an incredible experience. In addition to the Tundra Swans, of course, there are many other species of puddle ducks and diving ducks that are moving through at the same time, as well as herons and egrets, sandhill cranes, bald eagles. It's quite a wildlife spectacle. We also have some amazing species of neotropical songbirds that move through in the springtime. There are 119 different species of fish that are found here in the refuge. over 50 species of mammals, and 41 species of mussels, some of which are only found here on the Mississippi River. So it is quite the wildlife bragging experience. And just like we have fantastic habitat for wildlife, the habitats here and the wildlife that enjoy them are truly fantastic for people to enjoy too. We are one of the most visited wildlife refuges in the United States. Folks come from all over to go hunting, fishing, to observe wildlife, enjoy birding, get out for swimming and boating. Over 4 million people visit here every year. So it's quite a dynamic place in both that the river changes quite a bit. There's really dynamic wildlife that are here, and it's super busy with people as well. So when we think about webcams and their ability to bring people closer to nature, I think that's truly a wonderful opportunity for folks to enjoy the refuge in both similar and different ways than being here in person. I hope that gave you a really quick overview of what the refuge is like in a nutshell. And at this point, I'm going to switch over to Ed Britton, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the webcams that we have in the Savannah District. So Ed, I'm going to pass the microphone to you, and I will move on to your slides.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, so the Savannah District Webcams is a partnership, and we use it to expand environmental education, and especially for the public's appreciation for both habitat and wildlife. We partner with the Corps of Engineers on many projects on the river, including the Bald Eagle annual Eagle celebration. The Stewards of Upper Mississippi Refuge is our friends group. You can see their website identified at the top. It's a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to environmental education, to creating quality wildlife habitat, and enhancing the public's understanding and enjoyment of the refuge. The stewards purchase the webcams, the associated materials needed for operation, and they are our gatekeepers. They oversee the technical as well as the social media aspects of the webcams. Social media management is a grand challenge. It requires extensive efforts to educate the public about nature, and especially our intent to allow nature to take its course rather than trying to intervene when bad things happen. And there's a lot of drama around webcams. We've had 5 webcams over the years. Maintenance and management are huge challenges. One of our first webcams was in a Peregrine Falcon nest box located on top of a large grain silo on the Mississippi River shoreline. That webcam was functioning from 2010 to 2014, but in 2015, the female returned, laid 5 eggs, and a mate never showed up, and she abandoned the nest. Next slide, Katie. So our Cormorant Island webcam, this was installed in 2012. This is a very unique one. This is out on, this historic island lies on the main channel of the Upper Mississippi River. It welcomes every passerby that travels this section of river. The webcam features a nesting colony of great blue herons, great egrets, double-crested cormorants, and American white pelicans. And the pelicans are especially an interesting story. They were absent from our area for many, many decades and began returning in the late 80s. Small groups, they lazily summered on the sandbars. They began building up, and in 2007, the very first pelican nesting colony was identified on this island, and it was the first documented pelican nesting in Iowa since 1905. The pelican nesting colony has now grown to over 1,000 breeding pairs that nest on 5 islands. And pelicans have really spread out. I mean, they're located up and down hundreds of miles of river, but we still have not documented any other nesting colonies except in this Pool 13 in this 5 islands. Next. You can see the camera, the webcam that's set up here. It's solar powered. It has a large battery pack that you see it, and you can see the outstanding images that we have of this nesting colony. Next slide. Just kind of a close-up of the unit itself. You can see the young pelicans on the ground, flying all around. And the camera scans 180 degrees so that the viewer can understand how dynamic the nesting colony is. And as most of you know, pelicans are fish eaters, and the stench of dead fish emanates from the island, and it's smelled many miles upriver long before the birds come into sight. Many of our locals refer to the island as Bird Poop Island, although they use a different four-letter word other than poop. But it is very well known among the locals. Next slide. The colony is crowded with birds. They nest right next to each other. They love being friends. Herons, egrets, cormorants nested in the trees when the trees were still there. Flooding and just the habits of cormorants are breaking off branches. Many of the trees have now died, and the cormorants have adapted. They now nest on the ground. The island had occurred significant erosion during the 2019 flood. We had record flows. We had record high levels. It was about 10 feet higher than what you see here, and there was much erosion and so we partnered with the Corps of Engineers, and they brought in 10,000 cubic yards of sand. And we're seeing many of the river islands, these historic islands, being eroded away at a very heavy concentration. So we bought these 10,000 cubic yards in and rebuilt this. In order to do that, we had to remove the cam from that. And the colony had returned in the spring of 2020 before we could get the camera back up with the flooding. So we hope to put the camera back up this spring. It's funny, the restoration of these islands up and down this area where pelicans and double-crested cormorants has become very controversial, but specifically for some fishermen that complain they decimate the sport fish population. However, we have a very long-standing fish survey data set that shows that sport fish populations are very healthy and actually increasing in our section of the river. Next. So this is the migration webcam. And if you were in earlier, we were talking about the large concentrations of eagles. This migration cam is located in the tailwaters of Lock and Dam 13. And it was installed in 2012. It's attached to the Corps of Engineers building where the lock master and other operators work out of. During the winter, the lock is shut down. Barges don't come through because ice typically forms. And typically, we'll see 100 or more eagles in this site, as you can see here. Next. And what's so unique about this site is this is Lock and Dam 13. There's about 11 feet of difference on the right side of the dam versus the left side, and there's flows coming through all the time. And so that's what creates open water during the winter season. And when you see the trees off to the left-hand side, that was the trees that you saw before in the PowerPoint or in the picture right before that. Continuous water flow comes through the gates. It's especially attractive to eagles during harsh winters. In the open water that's created in the tailwaters. And during summer, we see large groups of pelicans also gather in the tailwaters, and they just gobble up the fish that are stunned or disoriented by the strong currents. Okay. So this is an incredible photo here. This was taken December 2013. Many photographers and eagle lovers come to the Lock and Dam for this view, but in that date, there was over 1,100 bald eagles lined up along the shoreline. They stretched out for over 1 mile. And it was a very harsh winter. The winter was complete. The Mississippi River was completely froze over. The only open water there was actually in the tailwaters of the Lock and Dam. And the eagles were lined up. There was just thousands of fish there that were stunned or dead. And it was pretty much an all-you-could-eat buffet of local sushi floating in the tailwaters. Next. And this is our most coveted webcam. This is the bald eagle trio. This unique story began in 2004, and a pair of eagles began nesting at a high visitor use area at Lock and Dam 13. And there was it was right close to a parking lot where a lot of visitors saw it, and it became very attractive. A lot of folks would come daily, and there was a lot of drama in this nest. It blew down. The pair moved to an adjacent backwater slough, and in those following years, there was a lot of failures and successes. And it wasn't until 2011 that we finally got a webcam placed at the nest. And at that year's same time, the nest got blown down again by wind. But then we started documenting a very intriguing adventure that led to the trio's unique story. Next slide. Just to show you some of the history and drama that really led to the trio. So in 2012, the male and female showed up, and the female laid 2 eggs, and she was incubating these eggs, and they typically lay eggs in January, late January, which is very early. And the mate seemed to be very dysfunctional, whether he was a young mate, but he wouldn't incubate the eggs. He wouldn't bring food to the female. And she would leave the nest for hours at a time in freezing weather. And we really never thought the eggs would hatch. Both of them they did miraculously. And at just a few days old, the chicks walked off the edge of the nest. It was a new nest that was very shallow. There wasn't a very big nest cup. So the female abandoned the nest. And when she came back in 2013, she had a new mate with her. But the old mate decided that he was going to stick around, that he wasn't going anywhere, and he sat out on the edge of the limb and just kind of watched them. And every now and then there would be a little confrontation between the 2 males, but he continued to do that for 3 years. And when they returned in 2016, they were a trio. There was a family with 2 dads. They mated with the female, and both males were accepted, and they assisted in all the nest duties. So that was the first year we actually saw the trio and documented that. And then a horrific incident in 2017. And the female, we had 2 young in the nest, and they were just a few weeks old. And this pair of pirate eagles came in, which we think probably came from a nest just a half quarter mile away that had blown down just earlier with high winds. On camera, it shows the female being attacked. It actually shows almost an hour of attack. And it appeared the 2 females ended up on the ground with one larger female in the back of the other with the talons stuck in the back. And the one female on top jumped off, went away. The other one really struggled. We went out there immediately that next morning. We could not find any blood. We couldn't find feathers. We couldn't find her. Just complete disappeared and never returned. So we believe that she was killed during that night. The random attacks continued for a couple of weeks, and social media lit up because folks were saying, we can hear her crying. We can hear her. You need to go out there. And what we found is if we did go out there, the 2 males would come off of the nest because they were concerned by us. And if they were off the nest, these random attacks, they could come in and kill the 2 chicks. So we decided that wasn't the best thing to do. Incredibly, the 2 dads fought off. They raised the chicks fledged. We gave them the Best Dads of the Year award. And incredibly also, they recruited a new female, and the new female came back in 2018. And in 2019, it was interesting when we were sitting here in the office and all 5 phones lit up. And we knew there was probably drama at the nest. And sure enough, we went and looked at the webcam, and the middle sibling had decided, I guess he was fed up with the youngest sibling. Maybe he was just exercising, but he lit on the back of him, knocked him out of the nest into the flooded backwaters. We immediately went out there. We found that he had swam over to a log, got himself up. He was drying. He was only 2 weeks away from fledging, so we felt it was best to leave him alone. And sure enough, within 3 weeks, he was back up in the nest and fledged. So it turned out great. And one of the more interesting things is mice were annoying cohabitants of the trio nest. When you watch them at night, mice would run around the nest and just irritate the heck out of the eagles. Okay. Next slide. So these are early nesters, and they really endure some dire weather up there. That's Hope, the female in the middle with the two males. This was 2019. That's the year that they had 3 young. So it's really incredible what these webcams show as far as what these eagles endure. Next. There's plenty to eat. We've got 2 dads going out there, and it's kind of interesting to watch the housekeeping when they're building onto the nest or feeding young, and especially when they're incubating eggs. The female likes to be on the eggs, and sometimes the males will come in. They'll sit down by her. They'll nudge her. When she comes in and they're on the nest, she may land on their back. She lets them know that she's the top dog in the nest, and when she's there, it's time for her to take care of the young. But it's a very interesting story. Next slide. And the chicks grow so incredibly fast. I mean, they get this dark coloration within a couple of weeks, and then within 35 days, typically is about the time that they fledge from the nest. Next. And we get to see what they endure up there. You know, this is the top of a tree along the river, and these howling winds that come along, they do endure an incredible amount, harsh conditions. Okay. And we see triplets in this nest. This is the 2019 nest, which is a sign of good habitat conditions, a generous food supply. And this was the picture that was taken just before the middle sibling pushed the lesser sibling out into the water. So obviously with 2 dads and 1 mom bringing food to them all the time, they're incredibly healthy out there. Next slide. So in 2019, when this received national coverage, just wanted to show you what this webcam is on YouTube. And just want to show you what it was like. We had armchair binge watching eagle admirers from 97 countries, and just look and see over 1 million views during the 2019 nesting season. And it just shows some of the data on that and the 2020 nesting season. No drama during that year, but still a lot of folks that pay attention to this, and you can see the gender breakdown, the device type, and obviously very, very popular. Okay. So on August 10th of this year, we had a hurricane force winds come through called a derecho. There was 100 miles an hour winds, and this was the nest prior to it. It toppled this nest very sadly. Fortunately, there was little drama as far as all of the young had fledged out. There was no eagles in it. So we lost the webcam, we lost the nest, but fortunately, the trio hung around. And if you go to the next slide, they moved right across the slough. They're not real good at picking a house. This old dead tree is not very big. It doesn't look very healthy, and it's right on the shoreline of the slough. So we've got our fingers crossed that they're going to be able to make it there, that the tree is going to withstand. But we aren't able to get our webcam back up in there because they've already building the nest, and they'll be laying eggs here in a couple of months, and we don't want to go up and disturb them. So we won't be able to reestablish the trio webcam until fall of this year after the young fledge. Okay, I'll pass it on to John.
All right. Okay.
Thanks very much, Ed. That was great. That was excellent. And Katie, too. Very interesting. So
Can you
John
see
is
my
with the
screen
Raptor.
okay?
Yep, just bring it up full screen.
Okay.
There we go.
Sounds good. I'm ready to go. So I just wanted to start out here by just showing this is the Raptor Resource Project website, raptorresource.org. So you can come and look at the bird cams here. There's all the different lists there, and the Mississippi Flyway camera is right there, and we look at that way. There's a live chat on the left-hand column, and then we've got the video play option here, and you can see some night action going on right there. I'm going to go ahead and stop this and get going, but I just wanted to show you guys how to get to that. And we also got the link on explore.org. And as it mentions here, powered by explore.org. So I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint here. All right. So welcome. Going to talk about the Raptor Resource Project Wildlife Webcams here as part of the program. RRP mission, we already talked about that, but basically strengthening raptor populations mostly through peregrine falcon, historically expanding participation in raptor preservation and helping foster the next generation of conservationists here. This slide shows Bob Anderson, who obviously I wouldn't be doing this here without him, his visionary leadership and work as a falconer, just passionate work. Expanding participation in raptor conservation here. We got two pictures here. We got two different programs going, one for the college age students on the lower left there. Luther College, we do stipends and have a banding station there up in Hawk Hill, just north of Decorah. And then on the right, we see a classroom, many classrooms. We'll talk about the numbers there, but kids using the Decorah Eagle Live Cam as part of their curriculum. Emily Neal here, one of our teacher coordinators here and writers, is releasing one of those raptors. It looks like a hawk from that trapping station. And then over on the right, we've got Lori Carnes, one of our veteran teachers who helps us put together programs here. They're comparing some weights of what an eagle nest would weigh and doing some math. So just really interesting about nature cams. This is what I know, from my experience through Raptor Resource Project, but really it's the utility of what do you need these cameras for. Early on in the program, Bob was using peregrine falcon cameras, little analog cameras, to monitor the presence of peregrine falcons in the 1990s. As part of that, and working with the power plants, May's internest, the daughter of the first falcon that Bob had produced, that nested up off of the Multi-Foods Tower in Minneapolis. Her daughter, May, was at the Excel plant in right on the St. Croix River over in at the Excel facility there, the King plant. That became very popular. 2013, they put another Excel Eagle Cam out in Colorado. 2008, Neil Reddig, Emmy-winning cinematographer and one of our board members, was working with Bob Anderson on a nature movie about the American eagle, and that's when they decided to put the Eagle Cam up. And in 2011, Amy Reese, working with Bob and Ustream, they put that camera online, and it just went viral. 270 million viewers that year. We still believe it's the most viewed live video of all time. And then today's HD experience. Just a quick shot here, 2016. This is back in the Ustream days. This just shows blue higher intensity circles there where people are watching, pretty much the Decorah Eagle Cam being watched across the world here. 7 million viewing hours that year. Think about that, 7 million hours people spent watching the Decorah Eagle. So they do attract people. We talked about how the Flyway camera got created. It's a collaboration between Raptor Resource Project, like I mentioned, explore.org, who we work with. A huge part of that is our cam operators, our armchair cinematographers who who we work with explore on that. Upper Mississippi River National Wildlife and Fish Refuge. Bryce Prairie Conservation Association, haven't mentioned them yet, but they continue to help support this, and we're critical in putting it together. So it got started, basically, this is a shot of Pool 7, Lake Onalaska from Great Spirit Bluff, our Peregrine Falcon cam. Every year we'd see these amazing shots, and your cameras just can't get too good. They've gotten amazing, but not good enough to show it like we'd like to. So that's when I reached out to Tim, Kendra, and the crew over there at the Bryce Prairie Center there, and that's when the idea for this cam came about. Here's another shot that's just amazing. From this is about a 2-mile shot out showing the concentration of some of the migrating waterfowl here. So how do you start a bird cam? How do you start a webcam? We talked about the rising water levels. We came up with, hey, we can't just put it on an island. It's not high enough. So we came up with pole design, and Joe Kowatski and the Bryce Prairie group and Mark there really helped us kind of come up with a plan. There's part of the crew there, me, Amy, Jake, and Kendra, and Calvin getting ready to take the poles out. Joe Kowatski there with his hand on one of the poles, and ready, set, lift. We put 2 poles up there, and it was quite a deal to try to get poles 5 feet buried in saturated sand. We ended up jetting out the bottom and getting the poles down and putting a lot of concrete in there. But here's the proud install team, Bryce Prairie Conservation, others there, Rich King with that we work with Falcon monitoring and banding. Just a great crew that we got this in there. What comes after the poles? Putting the solar power up. You can see it on the left, a battery pack enclosure there that has the power controls and things. And then testing, you can see me below on the right doing the initial testing. You see the microphones. There's actually 2 microphones there and a camera above. And that's how the water goes up and down out there. Here's our first shot from the camera. Calvin looking up, and we're taking a look. And here is one of the first shots. I don't have audio here, but you can imagine tuning into this in the morning as the sun is rising. The colors and the sound, it's just incredible. As Katie and Ed mentioned, and Randy has mentioned, just listening to that audio of the waterfowl there is incredible. So here's a shot of the autumn migration. We can see Tundra Swans in flight there. We can see the bluffs of the Mississippi River Valley, the Driftless Area, and a bald eagle coming across the screen. Sandhill cranes, get great close-ups and that incredible audio. Here's some eagles, immature, not a full adult on the left, and then a full adult letting us know who they are down below. And then we got sandhill cranes. We found out that they like turtle eggs, and they like to flip them up and wash them in the water and before they eat them a couple times. So we got some really neat stuff that comes up on this. Really research too, black-bellied whistling duck here. I don't think we have time to show the video right now. We'll see at the end, but really kind of out of its range. But we found out that watchers found it, our cam ops looked at it, we researched it, and basically there is a nesting pair that's up out of its typical range in this area. Pretty neat to see that kind of stuff. Just another shot, with these cameras and this equipment, pretty incredible. Sandhill there. Pintail here, just more examples of the waterfowl. We've got the cormorants, double-crested cormorant there, sitting right on the same log with pelican. Maybe that pelican's got a fish that they're looking for some tidbits there. In the off season, kind of in the wintertime when it ices over, we've seen some neat stuff here, some coyotes going across the ice. We see beaver, we see other wildlife, turtles, but I'll end this part of it by just showing you, some of the video that we get is just incredible here in the audio. You can imagine these eagles sitting there on the branch and just watching the river flow by. Just going to talk a little bit about more what Raptor Resource Project does. Our program work, we got the Raptor cams, We've got the Peregrine Falcon monitoring program that is still going strong today. We've got eagle tracking studies with Brett Mandernack down at Eagle Valley. Brett's also one of our board members. We got the education program, which took off and is really a huge part and a core part of our mission and our program. Teaching interface and the classroom programs. So the Decorah Eagles here, really that started this, just that whole thing and part of the movie making of American Eagle, that nature production, Bob and Neil and Amy talking about, hey, what it would be like if we showed this to the public and let everybody see what life is like in an eagle nest, and we know what happened after that. Here's just an incredible shot. This is a total darkness, so these cameras, we've got infrared lighting, and this is one where that really cold ice crystally snow landed down on our female eagle there, mom, Decorah. Just an amazing shot there, and you can imagine the video that goes with that. Here's our current male. We call him DM2 for Decorah male 2. Just some snow on him. He's our guy. Here's this season, 2020 nesting season, one of the young there, probably D 34, 35, or 36 there. I don't know which one. Here, DM2 is feeding. We can see 2 of the eaglets there in view. Here's just, Ed mentioned this, the incredible capacity of these eagles to survive in this varying climate here. This was around 15 below with winds and ice crystals, and it's just so amazing how an eagle can even survive with their 7,000 feathers, even that in this kind of climate. We get some really neat research here. How did we know that DM2, which eagle is there? We do biometrics with the quality of these cameras. You can see some imperfections in the iris of the eye of DM2 there. Those 2 little flecks over on the right side of his iris. I just looked at a picture that was zoomed in today, and I could see those same perfections or imperfections, whatever you want to call them, and a lot of the same, beak structure and things like that. So research is a big part of what we do too. Decorah Eagle Mealtime. Here's an example of food research. Near equal food delivery between the mom Decorah and DM2. Same thing at our north nest, remarkably close. 335 meals by mom, 346 by DM2, and a few self-feedings there. But what do they typically eat? Hey, this is right next to the Decorah fish hatchery. So the predominant, of course, a lot of the fish are sucker fish and others, but fish 644 meals, squirrel 10, rabbit 8, raccoon, duck, deer, bird, pheasant, field mouse. We had a toad. I don't think they ate the toad. They don't like toads, we found out. And then we get the unidentified food objects, not flying objects, although some of them might have flown in their lifetime, right? Decorah North Nest, we have that nest. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but just another remarkable comparison between food delivery by male, female, comparison with what we just looked at. Don't have time to get in here. Here's just an amazing shot of what you see. You can see a little bit of the egg tooth still there on the end of the beak of DN12. And here's DN12 post-fledge. Just some amazing natural shots there of the bald eagle with these cameras. We do have a kestrel cam through a partnership with Cornell. That's at farm of Neil Reddig and Laura Johnson, his wife. Here's 2019, 5 kestrels, 4 successful fledges. One of those died during the raising, but here's the mom kestrel with 5 open hungry mouths. Falcon cams. Hey, this is how I got started. Great Spirit Bluff. We see a falcon stretching there, showing us all its beautiful feathers there. And here's Great Spirit Bluff. There's the nest box on the rock face there. And then we've got what we call Cloud Lake, the clouds over Lake Onalaska and Pool 7. Again, amazing views there. Here's our current falcon pair, Nova and Newman. They're both unbanded falcons. Nobody got these 2 to get a band on them. Just research here too. Here's a couple of years prior back, we had black flies so bad with the flooding that year that it pretty much drove the young falcons out of the nest box. And you can see Carson there on the edge. He did fall. He didn't perish. We could catch him all the way down at the bottom of the bluff, about 100, 120 feet down at the base of the bluff. And we watched him survive and get food drops from the parents for basically 16 days until, remarkably, he showed up on the bluff, learning how to grab onto the rock face. Here's our prior female, Michelle, feeding him. Here's a shot of him up on top of the bluff, self-feeding his own food, probably passed to him by one of his parents. And there's just a shot of him down below the camera. Just again, the amazing video. It's easy to see how people get attached to these beautiful raptors. Big part of our program is the Peregrine Falcon monitoring. It's a little bit different this year with COVID. We couldn't get into a lot of facilities, but we still got to 16. We banded 50 falcons, and those sites are in city buildings, power plants, grain facilities, cliff sites. Here's one of those cliff sites, Twin Bluff in Nelson, Wisconsin, a natural eyrie, beautiful. Can you imagine rappelling down and seeing this and banding these falcons? That's one of the great things about this job, I have to say. Here's working with the crew helping band at Maiden Rock, Wisconsin. No masks there. This is the year before. This is 2019. And then Homer Bluff in Minnesota. Other research. We talked about eagle tracking with Brett Mandernack and the Eagle Valley crew. We've got 4 eagles right now. We don't get much data from D24 anymore. But last identified Ontario border, and then recently down by Spillville, Iowa. D27, we're getting lots of great data, and you can look on the website and see some of the letters from home where D27 is traveling. From this year, we trapped and put transmitters on D35 and D36, a female and male eagle from the Decorah nest, and there we've been watching them. D35 is up kind of by Amy, up by Elk River and north of the Twin Cities here, and D36 is on the Turkey River, southeast of Decorah. So what an amazing thing to be able to do. You can see D35 and D36 here. You can see off of their backs just the fine little GPS transmitter antennas there. Here's D27. So here's just an example of the map. You can see the dots there showing, where these eagles wander to, and that's a huge part of the research is where do these eagles go? Do they come back to their natal nest area? Here we can look at where they were and then transpose that on the satellite imagery and just see where they were. Here's Severn Lake in this case with D27. The classroom, Decorah Eagles Educational Chat. 1,585 participating classrooms in 2019-2020 using that live stream in their classroom. Just guessing 20 to 30 kids per classroom. That's a huge number of kids that are getting educated through watching bald eagles. We got guest moderators. The kids come on as guest moderators, some of the classrooms, and they actually teach the main watching, general public about the eagles and answer questions. So it's so cool to see them engaged like that. Education is our core mission. So this just shows the Raptor Resource Project Teachables part of the website here. You can get art, elementary, high school, language arts, life science, math, middle school, different lesson plans that our teachers have put together. Here's just an example of some of the displays of the work that the kids do. Here, teaching verbs, you can see everybody mantling there on the left, and on the right you can see them emulating soaring eagle. We have a banding station. I mentioned collaborative partnership with Luther College. We have 6 students each year get a $500 stipend, and they come and they learn how to trap and band and do research on raptors, whatever they can catch during the migration there. And then they take those raptors down, and we've got a module that we do with 1st through 7th grade students, and they release those. Homeschool and college student field trips had been going on up to this year. We really couldn't do much of that with COVID, so we had you can see one of our red-tailed hawk, proud releases here in progress, and just a beautiful program there. I want to mention here that this just the partners that bring these cameras together, and I was a landowner. That's how I got involved in this. The landowners, the partners who help make these cameras possible, and the education that we can do through them possible. The moderators, we've got 30, 40 volunteers that just do moderation on the pages, the Facebook page, the live chat, and then our cam operators. I started out doing that with Great Spirit Bluff, being a cam operator and cam builder, and they spend time as our armchair cinematographers giving you guys the views. So videographers who work up the video so we can use that, and the teachers who are doing that job. That's really all I've got here, so I'm going to stop sharing and get back to hopefully our presentation.
Thanks very much, John. Fantastic presentation. Katie, Ed as well. Awesome slides and your data. Very, very interesting. Let me jump right into some questions here. And while I'm doing that, if Melissa has a couple of the videos that John had, if you're able to play them, Melissa, go ahead and do it. And I'll read off some questions a while, and we can do that while we look at some video. But here's one from Joe. This came in on live stream. Joe asked, can you say something about the states and other camera operators, and maybe something other than birds? There are a lot of webcams for elk, for example. Yes, Joe, definitely. We've been talking about birds, but birds happen to be relatively easy, relatively speaking, because they build nests and they're going to be in their nest. Whereas elk and other critters like buffalo, they're moving around. It's a little harder to put cams on them. But I mentioned earlier in the program, the National Park Service has a fantastic webcam up at Katmai National Park in Alaska on bears. In this time of the year, the bears come there to feed on salmon at I believe it's called McNeil Falls. So that's a very reliable place to put cameras. Hugely popular bear cam up at Katmai there. Fish and Wildlife Service has manatee cam at a refuge down in Florida at Crystal Springs National Wildlife Refuge. There's another one up in Maine, off the coast of Maine. I believe it's a partnership between Audubon and the Fish and Wildlife Service. That's a seal cam. So yes, there are many different animals, not just birds, around this country, in Canada, all around the world. In Africa, there's elephant cams and giraffe cams. Explore.org has a lot of those cams. So yeah, very, very interesting. A lot of different critters, including in zoos. In Washington, D.C., the panda cam, they just had a young panda born. That's hugely popular. So at zoos, at refuges, at parks in the wild, a lot of people are enjoying these wildlife webcams. But as you've seen, all of them, the common thread is that they're partnerships. One person can't do this alone, right. Even one agency. So they're definitely partnerships.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Randy. I have to do a shout out to Explore. You know, as far as other than Raptor cameras, the suite of cameras across the world and different animals, I think is unmatched with what you can see with Explore.org. And they've brought, you know, our partners in, Audubon out with others. And between that and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and what we've got going here, it's quite a broad diversity of cameras that people can watch.
Yeah, some beautiful video here, ice flow on the river and the bald eagle there. Let me go to some Facebook questions. Michelle had asked, where was the first animal cam? And Susan actually answered that. She said it was May's Internest. I think John brought that up a while ago on a slide, was the first bird cam. May was the first peregrine falcon to nest on a smokestack in 1997, and the Raptor Resource Project broadcast that cam in partnership with Excel Energy. So that's very interesting. Right. Let me scroll on to some other questions. Yeah, Deb mentioned that she sees, Deb is way up in high-level Alberta, and she sees the Sandhill cranes migrating through there. Somebody mentioned that they make a interesting kind of a purring sound. Scylla asks, will there be a cam on the trio nest since they lost their nest in the derecho? I guess she means on the new nest. Are there plans to put another cam in there, Ed?
There are. We just won't make it this nesting year because they're building the nest now, and we don't want to take the chance of going up there and disturbing them, possibly making them abandon the nest. So what we hope to do is, if the nest is successful this nesting season, we'll put it in probably in August of 2021.
Right, that's a good point. When we put these cams up, of course, we never want to disturb the birds. Here at NCTC, we just did our cam work back in a few weeks ago in mid to late October, when the adults aren't around much. They're not raising young, so they're in and out, but not full time as it is all through the spring. So we do it. Everybody that works with wildlife webcams tries to do these things when it's least disturbing to the animals, and of course we never want to disturb them during nesting season. Patricia has a question here. She says, I work with a local Eagle cam. My question is how to work with funding for new equipment and upkeep of the cams. Our cams were awesome to begin with. Then updated cams were amazing. Now they're old and not so reliable. Any suggestions would be appreciated. Yes, Patricia, the technology does change. It has changed rapidly. We've seen huge upgrades in cameras, and it's hard to keep up with it. Any ideas for Patricia there, folks?
I would say usually local interest in funding from local entities, including we've seen the Nests for Eagles for Kids, I think, is one in Wisconsin. Some other projects like that have come up. I can't remember if that cam is still going, but connecting with local entities and businesses to help with that, I think, is a big part. We do it basically on some larger funding from foundations and larger groups, and then all just people who make donations who want to see the cameras. So I think that's finding somebody and other in numbers, people that are interested in seeing that cam are probably the biggest connection there to make for funding.
Yeah, I would add that down in Florida, there's a real estate agency that operates an Eagle cam there. They sponsor it. Not sure where the nest is actually located, but it's well known, very popular nest. So as John was saying, look for local sponsors. It might be a cable company, it might be a power company. Those have the added advantage of having tree climbing equipment. We're fortunate here, we've got a local tree service company, arborist, Kyle Friend is his name, and he comes out and does our cam work. Our tree is not safe to climb, so we're very fortunate to have Kyle nearby and get up and put the cameras up there. But every place is a little bit different. But yeah, I think John's right. Look to your local folks first. Maybe even a university or a college could help you out with some of the technical aspects of it. Patricia said that the Decorah nest were her very first Eagle cam. She's now a moderator at my local Eagle cam. So that's great, Patricia. Glad to hear that. Todd Harless says, the lecture series was always one of my favorite things to work on there. Great job. I sure miss that. And he's talking about NCTC. Todd, by the way, worked here at NCTC for many years. Great photographer. He had some great photographs of the early eagles that were the original pair that were here. And Todd offered those up to our local friends groups, and they sold those to raise funds. That's another possibility for fundraising, selling photographs. And Todd was very gracious with his time and his photography skills. So lots of options there. Good to hear from you, Todd. I hope you're doing well. Patricia says, beautiful photos. Amy asks, what are the average initial setup and maintenance costs for wildlife cams like these? Can we give Amy a ballpark figure?
Big part of that is whether or not you have power, right? So if you got to go solar with the batteries and all that, that's going to add about probably $3,000 to $5,000 for a fairly robust system as far as what I'm dealing with. And it depends on whether you want to go online. I mean, if you don't necessarily want to go online, you don't need a computer to broadcast and other things like that. The quality of the cameras, the IP cameras and things that are out there, you can get a pretty darn good camera for $400 or less these days. Big thing is, can you get it on a building? Can you get it where it is what you want to see things, and is there power available? But boy, it can range, depending on, from $500 to $1,000 for a pretty simple system, all the way up to the flyweight camera is probably pushing 10K.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Some places, visitor centers, for example, they might have the camera displayed in the visitor center, but not necessarily going out online. Going out online could add some expense to it, but there's organizations like HD on Tap, Explore.org. Those are just two of the better known ones that provide streaming services. The Outdoor Channel, that's who streams the National Conservation Training Center Eagle Cam. So it depends what you want to do with it, but having some sort of a power source there is a big deal. If you've got to add solar and storage to it, that can run up the cost too. That nest that I mentioned, thanks for sending this, Deb. That's in Fort Myers, Florida. It's the Southwest Florida Eagle Cam, and that's the one that I mentioned that was sponsored by a local real estate agent down there.
You got the night parade of Canadian geese going by. That's live, and that is the infrared light that are out on the Mississippi Flyway camera. So that's what you're watching right now.
And we are about at the end of our program, folks. So I want to thank everybody that joined in this evening for joining us. Thank you very much for joining on Facebook Live or live stream. And special thanks to our guests, Katie Julian, Ed Britton, and John Howe. Thanks so much for your time and your knowledge and your fantastic slides. Such an interesting topic. We could go on till midnight, I'm sure. but we better stop. So with that, I will say, on behalf of the National Conservation Training Center, thank you very, very much for joining us. And have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy those wildlife webcams. Get outdoors whenever you can, and enjoy the great outdoors. So thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, by the way, thanks, Melissa.